She came to steal the cowboy's map before dawn, but the first sound Niyeli Red Hawk heard inside his lonely ranch was not a gun being cocked. It was a man whispering thanks to a tired horse for carrying him one more day. The wind moved low across dry Mercy Canyon that night, dragging red dust over the porch boards and pushing it through every crack in the little ranch house. Niyeli stood beyond the fence in a gray shawl, still as a shadow, one hand near the small knife beneath her belt, the other closed around the words Chief Tahoma had given her before sunset. Bring back the map before our children start dying. She had ridden 7 miles through scrub oak, dry washes, and moonlit stone to reach Elias Whitaker's place. In her mind, Elias was already a thief, a white cowboy sitting on water that did not belong to him, a man guarding a strip of painted leather while Apache mothers boiled the last of their corn in pots gone nearly dry. That was what she had been told. That was what made her step steady. But then she saw the bucket. It sat outside the fence, half full, with a tin cup hooked on the handle. No lock, no warning sign, no trap she could see, just water left for whoever might need it. Niyeli stared longer than she meant to. Men who stole life did not usually leave it sitting in the moonlight. From inside the barn came a soft groan, animal and tired. She moved closer and looked through the gap in the boards. Elias Whitaker knelt beside an old bay horse with a white blaze down its face, holding its head in his lap while he dipped his fingers into a canteen and wet its mouth one careful drop at a time. He was not young, but not old either, with dust in his hair, sun on his skin, and shoulders built by work instead of pride. His hat lay on the ground beside him. His revolver hung on a peg across the stall, too far away to matter. Easy, Jonah, he murmured. You carried me through worse country than this. The horse breathed hard. Elias gave it another few drops, though the canteen sounded almost empty. Niyeli felt something shift in her chest. Not mercy. Not yet. A doubt. Small and sharp. She turned toward the house. Through the window, above a cold stove and a table worn pale by years of elbows and worry, she saw a map hanging on the wall. Brown leather. Dark ink. 3 lines crossing like dry rivers. Her people needed that map. Her chief had trusted her because she could move where warriors could not. Because she knew enough English to lie gently. Because men like Elias often looked at an Apache woman and saw danger too late, or humanity not at all. She stepped onto the porch and let her shoulders sag. Let her breath grow thin. Let the storm dust paint her face with exhaustion. Then she knocked once. Inside, the cabin went silent. Slow boots crossed the floor. The door opened, and Elias Whitaker stood before her with a lantern in one hand and no weapon in the other. His eyes moved from her shawl to her dusty boots, then to the faint red mark she had placed across her wrist to look wounded. He saw too much. She knew it at once. Still, he opened the door wider. Storm is turning mean, he said. Come in before it takes the roof and you with it. Niyeli did not move. The map waited behind him, quiet as a secret. Elias glanced over his shoulder, then back at her, and for one breath she wondered if he knew why she had come. Then he stepped aside. There are beans on the stove, he said. Water too, if you need it. And that was the first lie the night told her, because the man she had come to rob sounded nothing like an enemy. Niyeli stepped inside with the storm behind her and the smell of beans, wood smoke, and old leather waiting in the room. The cabin was smaller than she expected, no more than 2 rooms tucked under a roof that complained whenever the wind leaned hard against it. There were no silver cups, no polished trophies, no signs of a man grown rich by keeping others thirsty. Only a narrow bed, a cracked wash basin, a Bible with its cover nearly worn smooth, and muddy boots set carefully beside the door. Elias placed the lantern on the table and moved slowly, not because he feared her, but because he wanted her to know she did not have to fear him. That almost angered her. Fear was easier. Fear gave her something solid to stand on. Kindness made the floor feel thin. Sit, he said. You look like the canyon chewed on you some. Niyeli lowered herself onto the chair, keeping her shawl close, keeping her eyes from resting too long on the map. Up close, it was not as clear as it had seemed through the window. The leather was old, browned by smoke and time, with several lines drawn in dark ink and faded symbols near the corners. Elias ladled beans into a tin bowl and set it before her. Then he poured water into a cup and placed it beside the bowl. Not too close. Not like a man trying to touch her hand by accident. Just close enough to say it was hers. Niyeli stared at the cup. Water had become heavier than gold in the last month. Back in the Apache camp, children had learned to drink in sips, so small they barely wet the tongue. Old women saved rain in folded cloth. Men rowed farther each morning and returned with dust on their faces and silence in their mouths. Chief Tahoma had not wanted to send her, but the young scouts had failed, and the elders had whispered that Elias Whitaker would never give the map willingly. "You are a long way from any road," Elias said. Niyeli lifted the spoon, but did not eat. "Roads are not always safe." "No," he said. "They are not." He sat across from her, leaving the table between them like a treaty neither side had signed. His eyes were gray, tired, and too steady. A man with guilty hands usually looked away. Elias did not. That made him harder to hate. "You got a name?" he asked. She paused long enough for a better lie to come. "Nora." Elias nodded once, as if accepting it, though something in his face said he had placed the name on a shelf with other things he did not fully believe. "Nora," he repeated. "Mine is Elias." "I know." The words slipped out before she could stop them. The wind struck the cabin so hard the lantern flame bent sideways. Elias looked at her then, truly looked, and the room grew quiet around the mistake. Niyeli reached for the cup to cover it. Her fingers shook only once, but he saw that too. "Most folks who come here knowing my name want something," he said. No anger, no accusation, just a truth laid gently on the table. Niyeli swallowed. "Maybe I only wanted shelter. Maybe." He leaned back, his hands open on his knees. But shelter usually knocks with both hands empty. Her breath slowed. The knife under her belt felt suddenly foolish, like a child carrying a secret too large for her pocket. Outside, the old horse called softly from the barn. Elias turned his head toward the sound, and in that small movement Niyeli saw the man beneath the rumors, divided between caution and mercy, between a dry well and a door he had still chosen to open. On the wall behind him, the map waited. But as the storm deepened and the lamp painted gold along the edges of his face, Niyeli began to understand that stealing it would not be the hardest part of her mission. The hardest part would be remembering why she had come. The storm held the cabin in its fist for another hour, rattling the shutters and pressing dust against the glass until the outside world became nothing but a brown whisper. Niyeli ate slowly because hunger would have made her careless if she let it show. Elias did not watch her eat. That was another kind of mercy. He rose once to add wood to the stove, once to check the latch, and once to place a folded blanket near the hearth. Each movement was quiet, measured. "You can sleep there," he said. "Floor is hard, but it is warmer than the porch." Niyeli kept her eyes lowered. "You give shelter to strangers often?" "Only when the sky gets mean." "That sounds foolish." Elias almost smiled. "My father used to say foolishness and decency were the same code until morning." The words settled between them. Niyeli looked again at the wall. The map hung near the stove, close enough that firelight touched its edges. It looked unguarded, too unguarded. A strip of leather, a few faded marks, a secret large enough to bend the fate of a tribe and a town, left hanging where any desperate hand could take it. Elias noticed her glance, though he pretended not to. He poured the last of the coffee into one cup and pushed it across the table without drinking any himself. "You are curious about that old thing." Niyeli wrapped both hands around the cup. "It is strange decoration for a poor cabin." "Most decorations are lies," he said. "That one tells at least half the truth." "Half." The word caught her sharper than it should have. "What is the other half?" Elias looked toward the map, and for the first time since she entered, something closed in his face. Not suspicion, grief. Buried with people who trusted the wrong men. Niyeli thought of Chief Tahoma beside the dry creek bed. She thought of children sleeping with empty water gourds because hope had become a habit no one wanted to shame. She thought of the order. Bring back the map. Not understand him. Not pity him. Not let his voice trouble your heart. "You speak like a man who has lost something," she said. "Everybody in this country has." Elias turned back to her. "Some just learn to make other folks pay for it." For a moment, Niyeli heard Silas Crowder in that sentence, though Elias had not said his name. Silas with his polished vest and careful smile. Silas telling Chief Tahoma that Elias had hidden water to force both town and tribe to their knees. Silas promising he could help, if only the Apache brought him the map first. Niyeli had disliked him on sight, but dislike did not fill water skins. You live alone, she said. That makes people talk. People talk louder when they do not know the truth. And what is the truth? Elias leaned forward, the lantern carving shadows beneath his cheekbones. Truth is, I have had 3 offers for that map. One from a cattle company, one from a man at the land office, one from Silas Crowder. Niyeli went still. Elias saw it. You know him, he said softly. She said nothing. Then you know enough to be careful. Crowder does not want water. He wants gates. He wants every thirsty soul in this valley to pass through his hand before they drink. Niyeli felt the cup cooling between her palms. The map on the wall no longer looked like the end of her mission. It looked like bait. Elias stood and took his coat from the peg beside the door. For one breath, she thought he might finally reach for the gun. Instead, he laid the coat across the back of a chair and turned away toward the small washroom. Get some rest, Nora, he said, using the false name with a kindness that cut deeper than accusation. Morning has a habit of asking harder questions. When the washroom door closed, Niyeli rose without sound. The cabin floor creaked once, but the storm covered it. She crossed to the wall, lifted the map from its nail, and held it near the lantern. Her heart tightened. The ink lines were wrong. The Apache mark was broken. The canyon bend was missing. This was not the real map. Behind her, Elias spoke from the dark, calm as a man who had been waiting for the truth to step into the light. Most thieves look at the wall first. The leather map stayed in Niyeli's hands, but it no longer felt like a prize. It felt like a question. Elias stood near the washroom door, half in shadow, his sleeves rolled to the forearms, his face quiet beneath the lantern glow. He had not reached for the revolver. He had not raised his voice. Somehow that made the room feel smaller. Niyeli set the false map back on the nail with care. You knew, she said. I knew you were not lost. Then why open the door? Elias looked toward the window, where dust scratched softly against the glass. Because being lied to under a roof is still better than leaving someone outside in a storm. She almost answered. Pride rose first, then shame. Neither found words. The knife beneath her belt pressed against her side, a cold reminder of the woman she had been when she crossed his yard. Elias saw her hand move near it, and he shook his head once. Keep it, if it helps you feel safe. That stopped her more surely than any threat could have. Men in town had stared at her as if her very breath was a warning. Patrol riders had washed her hands before they washed her eyes. But this man, whose home she had entered under a false name, told her to keep the only thing that made him vulnerable. You should be afraid of me, she said. I have been afraid of better things than you. There was no insult in it. Only weariness. Niyeli stepped away from the wall. The children in my camp have dry mouths. The old people wake before daylight and pretend they are not thirsty, so the young will drink first. My chief was told you had the only road to water and would let us suffer before sharing it. Elias closed his eyes, not as a guilty man, but as a man hearing a wound described in the language he had failed to prevent. Crowder told him that. He said you were holding the valley hostage. Crowder says whatever opens a door. And you? Her voice sharpened. What do you say? Elias crossed the room slowly and stopped at the table, leaving space between them. He picked up the coffee cup she had not finished and set it nearer the stove to keep warm. A small act. A foolish act. A decent one. I say water should not have an owner, he said. But men keep trying to put fences around the mercy of God. Niyeli looked at him hard. Fine words from a man with a hidden map. His jaw tightened, the first crack in his calm. That map has 3 springs marked on it. Not 1. 3. My father found them with an Apache woman who saved his life when he was near dead in the flats west of here. She showed him water and made him swear it would never be sold. Niyeli felt her breath catch. What was her name? Elias touched the edge of the table with 2 fingers. He called her Morning Star. I do not know if that was her true name. The room seemed to tilt. Her grandmother had carried that name among white traders because they could not say the Apache one correctly. Niyeli remembered old hands braiding her hair, a low voice saying that water listened to those who arrived humble. You are lying, she whispered, but the words had no strength. Maybe, Elias said. Or maybe Crowder knew just enough truth to make us enemies. The stove snapped softly. Outside, the wind began to ease. Niyeli sat down because her legs no longer trusted her. The false name she had given him felt childish now. My name is Niyeli Red Hawk. Elias nodded, as if he had been waiting for the real one to enter the room. Niyeli, he said carefully, giving each sound respect. The real map is not on the wall. Where is it? Close enough that greedy men keep looking in the wrong place. His hand moved to the old coat draped across the chair, to a seam near the inside pocket, stitched darker than the rest. Near the heart. Niyeli understood then. The map had not been hidden from her. It had been protected from men like Silas Crowder. And by morning, if Crowder had sent another rider behind her, the whole valley would come asking for a secret she was no longer sure she wanted to steal. Morning came pale and cold, sliding over dry Mercy Canyon like a hand unsure what it would find. The storm had spent itself before dawn, leaving the porch buried in red dust and the water bucket half filled with grit. Niyeli stood beside the table while Elias opened the seam of his old coat with a small bone-handled knife. From inside the lining, he drew a folded piece of dark leather wrapped in oilcloth and tied with a faded blue thread. The real map looked older than the false one, worn soft at the creases, its edges dark from years of being carried close to sweat, rain, and worry. Niyeli did not reach for it. Elias laid it on the table and untied the thread. 3 springs appeared beneath the lantern light. One marked near the north ridge, one beyond the cattle flats, and one hidden inside Apache stone country, where red cliffs folded around a narrow wash. Beside each spring was a small mark, not English, not the neat lines of a surveyor, but Apache symbols drawn by a hand that knew the land as something alive. Niyeli touched only the air above them. "My grandmother made these," she said. Her voice was low, almost afraid to disturb the dead. Elias watched her face, and the last of his doubt seemed to leave him. "Then she trusted my father with more than water." Niyeli looked at him. She trusted him to remember. He turned toward the window, where sunlight caught the dry yard and the old horse Jonah, standing tired but steady near the barn gate. He did remember, Elias said. Then men started coming with papers, deeds, offers, threats wrapped in polite language. My father kept saying the same thing. Water is not a kingdom. He rested one hand on the back of the chair. Crowder came after he died. Said a map like that could make me the richest man in 2 counties. And you refused. I refused him money. That made him certain I had a higher price. Niyeli thought of Silas Crowder's polished boots in Apache dust, his soft voice telling Chief Tahoma that white men understood only leverage. She had believed half of him because thirst had a way of making lies sound practical. He came to our camp with pity in his mouth, she said. He told us you washed our suffering from your fence. Elias gave a tired breath. I left water outside that fence every day. That bucket would not save a tribe. No, he said, but it might save whoever reached it first. There was no pride in his answer. Only the plain grief of a man who knew how small decency could look against a valley full of need. Why not bring the map to Chief Tahoma yourself? Niyeli asked. Elias looked back at her. Because 3 months ago, I rode toward your camp with it. Before I got within 2 miles, Crowder's men met me on the trail with smiles and questions. Too many of both. By sundown, the whole town was saying I had tried to bargain water for protection. Your people would have heard worse by the next morning. Niyeli saw it then, the shape of the trap. Not a cage made of iron, but of rumors, timing, and thirsty people pushed toward suspicion. Crowder had not needed a gun. He only needed each side to imagine the other cruel enough to deserve hatred. Elias folded the map halfway, then stopped. I can take you to the springs, he said. All 3. She searched his face. You would walk into Apache country with me after I came to steal from you. You came because children needed water. He picked up the blue thread and wrapped it around the map again. That is not the same as greed. The answer struck her harder than blame would have. Outside, far beyond the fence, a rider appeared briefly on the ridge and vanished behind the cedar line. Niyeli saw him first. Elias saw her see him. Neither spoke for a breath. Elias reached for his hat, not his gun. Crowder is awake, he said. Niyeli took the map from the table at last, not as a thief, but as a witness. For the first time since Chief Tahoma gave her the mission, she knew the most dangerous road ahead was not the one leading to water. It was the one leading back with the truth. Niyeli and Elias left the ranch by the eastern wash, where the ground held firmer after rain and hoofprints disappeared under loose gravel. Jonah was too weak for the road, so Elias saddled a younger roan named Mercy, then gave Niyeli his canteen before filling his own only halfway. She noticed. He noticed her noticing. Neither said a word. The sun climbed fast, turning wet sand to steam and laying bright fire across the canyon walls. Elias rode with the map tucked back inside his coat, not hidden now, but kept safe from wind and dust. Niyeli rode beside him, close enough to speak without raising her voice, far enough that the silence between them could still breathe. Crowder's rider will reach town first, she said. Then we do not go through town. He may ride to my camp. Elias looked across the flats. Then we reach your chief before his lie does. By noon, they found the first spring beneath a shelf of limestone 2 miles north of the ridge. It was small, no wider than a wagon wheel, but clear water trembled in its basin, cold enough to mist the stones. Elias knelt and scooped away leaves that had fallen over it. My father marked this one for travelers, he said. Not enough for cattle. Enough for a family. Niyeli crouched across from him and touched the damp stone. Her grandmother's symbol had been carved there, faint but living. A circle, 3 small lines. Mercy under earth. For the first time, she believed the map completely. Not because of ink. Because stone had remembered what men tried to twist. They filled both canteens, then rode south toward the second mark. The heat thickened. Cicadas buzzed in the brush. Somewhere far off, a hawk turned slow circles over the flats. Near a dry creek bed, they found a child. An Apache boy, maybe 7 years old, sitting beneath a mesquite tree with his knees drawn up and his face pale from thirst. His small water gourd lay cracked beside him. Niyeli was off her horse before Mercy stopped. She spoke softly in Apache, touching his shoulder, checking his eyes, his breathing, the dust on his lips. The boy tried to answer but could only whisper. Elias did not crowd him. He only removed his canteen and handed it to Niyeli. She looked at it. This is yours. He needs it more. There is not much left. Then give it slow. The boy drank in careful sips. His hands trembled around the canteen, but color returned to his cheeks little by little. Niyeli watched Elias while the child drank. The cowboy stood a few steps away, hat low, eyes on the horizon as if giving them privacy was as natural as giving water. She thought of every warning she had been raised on. Some true, some earned by history, some sharpened by grief until they cut people who had not made the wound. Why help a child who may be taught to hate you? She asked quietly. Elias kept looking toward the ridge. Children do not hate first. The wind moved between them, carrying sage and warm dust. Someone teaches them. Niyeli felt the words settle where suspicion had been. The boy touched her wrist and whispered something. She translated without thinking. He says your horse has kind eyes. Elias looked back then, and the smallest smile crossed his face. Tell him Mercy has better manners than I do. Niyeli told the boy, and the child gave a weak laugh, soft as water over stone. It was nothing. It was everything. They lifted him onto Niyeli's horse and turned toward the Apache camp with the second spring still unreached. Behind them, a thin column of dust rose near the western road. One rider had become 3. Crowder was no longer only awake. He was moving, and by the time the red cliffs came into view, Niyeli knew the truth would arrive carrying less dust than the lie chasing them. The Apache camp came into view just as the afternoon light turned copper along the red cliffs. Smoke rose from low cooking fires, thin and careful, the kind of smoke made by people saving wood as much as water. Children stood near the shade shelters and watched the riders approach without running forward. That told Elias more than words could have. In a camp with enough water, children could afford to waste their feet. This one had taught them stillness. Niyeli rode first with the thirsty boy seated before her. When his mother saw him, she came quickly, then stopped when she noticed the white cowboy riding behind. Her face moved through relief, fear, and warning in a single breath. Other eyes turned. Men rose from where they had been repairing bridles. Women stepped closer to the children. No one shouted. That made the silence heavier. Chief Tahoma emerged from beneath a brush shelter, tall, narrow, and grave, with gray in his braids and dust on the hem of his blanket. He looked at the boy first, then at Niyeli, then at Elias. Nothing in his face welcomed them. You return with him, he said in English, each word shaped like stone. Niyeli dismounted and helped the boy down. I return with water, and with the man who knows where more waits. A murmur moved through the camp. Elias stayed mounted until Niyeli looked back and gave the smallest nod. Then he swung down slowly, removed his hat, and held it at his side. He had left his rifle tied to the saddle. Every warrior noticed. Chief Tahoma noticed most of all. Silas Crowder came before noon, the chief said. He said you failed. He said this man sent you back with sweet words to lead us into a bargain. Niyeli's throat tightened. The lie had beaten them there after all. Elias looked toward the western trail. Crowder is good at arriving early with the wrong truth. One of the younger warriors stepped forward, anger bright in his eyes. You speak too easily for a man whose people fence rivers. Elias did not answer him. He looked at Tahoma instead. I did not come to defend every white man. I came to show you a map one Apache woman once trusted to my father. At that, the chief's eyes changed. Not softening, sharpening. Whose hand? Niyeli stepped between them. Grandmother's. The word landed like a prayer spoken too close to the fire. Tahoma stared at her. You are certain? I saw her mark at the first spring. She lifted the cracked gourd from the child and held it out. He drank there. The mother clutched her son closer and began to weep without sound. Elias reached into his coat, but 3 warriors shifted at once. He froze, hand open. Not afraid. Careful. The map is inside the lining, he said. I will not touch it unless your chief permits it. That single sentence changed the air. Permission, not challenge, not demand. Chief Tahoma studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Elias drew out the oilcloth bundle and placed it on the ground between them. He did not step across it. Niyeli knelt, untied the blue thread, and unfolded the leather herself. The symbols appeared beneath the red light of evening. Several elders leaned forward. One old woman covered her mouth. Tahoma lowered himself slowly to one knee and touched the mark with 2 fingers. Morning Star, he whispered. For the first time, Elias heard the name spoken as belonging, not memory. Before anyone could speak again, hoofbeats rolled into the camp from the west. Silas Crowder arrived with 2 riders behind him, clean vest shining, smile ready. Dust gathered only at the bottom of his boots, as if even the trail had not wanted him. His eyes found the open map. Then Niyeli. Then Elias. The smile stayed, but the warmth left it. Well now, Crowder called, pleasant as a church bell and twice as hollow. Looks like the thief brought the stolen goods home. Every face turned to Niyeli. The old mission rose around her like smoke. Elias said nothing. Chief Tahoma said nothing. And in that hard, waiting silence, Niyeli understood that the next words would not decide who owned the water. They would decide who she had become. Silas Crowder dismounted as if he had been invited, brushing dust from his sleeves with slow, graceful hands. He gave Chief Tahoma a respectful nod that carried no respect at all, then turned his smile toward the open map lying between the people like a living thing. I warned you, he said. I told you Whitaker would hide behind a woman when the truth caught him. Niyeli felt every eye on her. The camp had become so quiet she could hear the leather creak on Elias's saddle and the small breath of the child drinking from a cup beside his mother. Crowder stepped closer, but not close enough to cross the space Tahoma had left around the map. That map belongs under lawful protection, Crowder continued. The land office can see it copied, registered, and managed. Nobody has to quarrel if everybody follows the proper order. Elias looked at him from beneath the brim of his hat. Your order has a price at the gate. Crowder's eyes cooled. A fair price keeps trouble from the door. Water was here before your prices. The words were quiet, but they moved through the camp like wind through dry grass. Chief Tahoma raised one hand, and the Apache warriors remained still. No weapons lifted. No voices rose. This was not a fight of guns. It was a fight of truth, and truth has its own slow draw. Crowder looked to Niyeli. Tell them what you were sent to do. The old shame returned, sharp and familiar. Niyeli could have hidden inside half a truth. She could have said she came only because her people needed help. She could have let Elias stand beneath the weight of suspicion while she kept her dignity clean. But Elias had opened his door. He had let her keep her knife. He had given water to a child who did not know his name. She stepped into the circle and faced her chief. I was sent to take the map, she said. I used a false name. I entered his house with a lie. He knew. A murmur passed among the people. Crowder smiled. Then Niyeli turned and looked at him. And still he fed me. The smile thinned. Still, he gave me shelter. Still, he brought the real map here himself. after your lie reached us first. Crowder's voice sharpened beneath its polish. A thief praising the man she failed to rob is not proof. No, Niyeli said. But your own ink is. She lifted the false map from Elias's saddlebag, the one from the cabin wall, and spread it beside the real one. The fading light showed what darkness had hidden. The false map carried neat corrections in black ink, small changes where canyon bends had been moved and one spring had been erased. Niyeli pointed to the corner, where the mark of the land office sat beneath a smear Crowder had not fully scraped away. Chief Tahoma leaned in. Elias said nothing. He did not need to. Crowder's face lost its softness. Copies pass through many hands. This one passed through yours, Elias said. You offered me money for the real map 2 months ago. The next week, this false one appeared in town. And when Niyeli touched it last night, you were already sending riders to call her a thief. Niyeli reached into her pouch and drew out the strip of blue thread from the oilcloth bundle. My grandmother tied the true map with this. She taught me that a promise is not kept because paper says so. It is kept because someone loses something by breaking it. She laid the thread across the real map. Elias Whitaker could have sold this and owned the valley. Instead, he lived poor beside a drying well. The old woman near Tahoma began to hum under her breath, low and sorrowful, as if recognizing a story that had waited years to be finished. Tahoma rose. His shadow fell across both maps. Silas Crowder, he said, you came to us carrying pity, but your pity had teeth. Crowder looked around and saw no hand reaching for him, no anger he could use, no chaos to hide behind. Only faces. Still faces. Human faces. Tahoma turned to Elias. The springs will be opened. Not sold. Not hidden. Elias bowed his head once. Niyeli looked at the map, then at the cowboy who had guarded it near his heart. She had come to take leather and ink. Instead, before her people, she gave back the one thing Crowder had tried to steal from them all, the right to trust what mercy looked like. By the next morning, the first spring was opened with shovels, tin cups, and bare hands working side by side beneath the limestone shelf. No bell rang. No speech was given. The valley had heard enough speeches from men who wanted to own what they did not create. Chief Tahoma sent 2 riders to mark the second spring near the cattle flats, and Elias showed them the safest trail, drawing the bends and dust with a stick before the sun climbed high. The third spring, hidden in Apache stone country, remained under the care of the tribe, but not as a secret meant to punish. It would be guarded the way a fire is guarded in winter, not to keep others cold, but to make sure greed did not step too close. Silas Crowder rode away before noon with his clean vest buttoned wrong and his riders looking anywhere but at him. No one chased him. No one needed to. Some men are smaller when they leave with their lies still breathing behind them. By sunset, water moved through a shallow trench toward a row of waiting barrels. Apache children drank first, then the old, then the horses, then the men who had spent all day pretending their throats were not dry. Elias stood back from the line, hat in his hands, dust on his boots, watching as if the sight cost him something and paid him back at the same time. Niyeli found him near the edge of camp where the red cliffs threw long shadows over the sand. She carried the real map wrapped in oilcloth and tied again with the blue thread. For a while, neither spoke. Wind moved through the mesquite. Somewhere nearby, the boy they had found in the creek bed laughed as Mercy lowered her head to sniff his palm. You should keep this, Niyeli said. Elias looked at the bundle but did not take it. It belongs with your people. It belonged to a promise before it belonged to anyone. That made him look at her. The evening light softened the hard lines worry had left on his face. He seemed less like the man in the rumors now and more like the man she had seen in the barn, giving the last of his water to an old horse and asking nothing from the darkness in return. Then maybe the promise needs 2 keepers, he said. Niyeli held the map out. This time, he accepted it, but only by taking one in while she kept the other. Between them, the old leather hung quiet, no longer bait, no longer burden, no longer something to steal. Chief Tahoma saw them from across the camp and said nothing. The old woman who had hummed the night before nodded once, as if a long road had finally found its bend. Later, when Elias returned to his ranch, Niyeli rode with him as far as the fence. The bucket was still there, gritty from storm dust, empty now. She took it to the well without being asked, rinsed it clean, and filled it halfway. Elias watched from the porch. "You came for that map," he said. Niyeli set the bucket back outside the fence, where any traveler could reach it. "I did." A quiet smile touched her voice, though her face stayed solemn. "But I found something harder to steal." Elias did not ask what she meant. Some answers lose truth when forced into words. He went inside and laid the map on the table, not on the wall, not inside his coat, not hidden near his heart. On the table, in the open. Then he set down 2 tin cups beside it, one on his side, one across from him. Outside, Niyeli looked once toward the Apache trail, then back at the little cabin glowing in the dusk. She did not cross the threshold yet. He did not call her in. The space between them held respect first, and that was enough for the evening. Far off, water ran over stone where silence had been. Out here, justice did not arrive with thunder. It came like a cup filled slowly, passed from one hand to another, until even the thirsty remembered they were human.